but for me, it was just like to have that goal, the mountain in Maine that you're trying to get to be able to focus on that goal and push through the hardships was kind of a big lesson that I learned. Like, you can kind of think about every challenge as that, like, problem solving, overcoming something. And it's even satisfying sometimes when it doesn't work out.
What is up, everybody? And welcome back to the Schooling Struggle Podcast. It is our belief that the only guarantee in life is that we are all going to struggle. And how we choose to embrace our struggles is what empowers us to become the best versions of ourselves. My name is Pete, coming to you from Heartland, Vermont. And with me is my friend and co-host, Todd. What's up, Todd?
What's up, Peter? How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Does Vermont do daylight savings time?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's dark now. It's dark at my house at 5 o'clock, which is a little excessive.
It's very dark. As the Native American once said, only the Westerner thinks that if you cut one end off the blanket and sew it onto the other end of the blanket will actually be longer. Right in the thick of nightlight savings, I guess you could call it right now. And I'm feeling a little uncomfortable.
Yeah? You feel a little uncomfortable. Oh, do tell.
I'll tell you why in a minute.
Okay.
But before we get into tonight's conversation, the uncomfortable conversation, when we started this thing 2 years ago, I kind of had a short list. I thought, once we start interviewing people and bringing people on the show, I kind of had a short list of people that I was really excited to bring on. And tonight's guest is one of those people. Before I bring him on, I want to set the stage. And here's how I'm going to set the stage. Around 2011, I started to really get into doing a deep dive into what enhances one's physical fitness. Kind of led me down the rabbit hole of mindset. So I started to learn more about mindset and how one can use mindset to achieve things and mindset's role in all things in life. And I really became adept to the thought process of life begins when we venture outside of our comfort zone. So I'd spent a lot of time kind of looking into that, podcasts, videos, books, the whole deal, and really learning about the power of mindset and venturing outside of one's comfort zones. 4 years after that, my daughter's born, and I literally see this unfold in real life. Like, this baby comes out of the womb, and its life starts in this really cold, uncomfortable world, right? It's really comfortable in mommy's belly and has all the things that it needs, and all of a sudden it's just forced out into this place that is just really, really uncomfortable. It starts crying and it starts its life. Like, life begins when we venture outside of our comfort zone. And in thinking about this, I've had a lot of great conversations with people who have kind of pushed me in this way and have really facilitated some really cool thought processes with regard to the concept of the importance of venturing outside of one's comfort zone. So all this to say, I brought on a really close friend and someone who I think could really add value to the conversation of venturing outside of one's comfort zone. And that is my friend Halleck Pogue. Halleck is a teacher at my school. He teaches some really cool subjects and teaches kids how to build stuff with their hands, carpentry type stuff. He was a peace studies major at Colgate University. Halleck, at one point in his life, thru-hiked the entire Appalachian Trail. And what I think is really cool is Halleck also built the house that he lives in with his own hands from start to finish, soup to nuts. And I just think the world of him and look up to him in so many ways. And I'm super psyched to bring him on tonight to talk about the importance of venturing outside of our comfort zone. So with that said, I'd love to introduce and bring Halleck onto the show. What's up, Halleck?
Hello.
Curious to know if I missed anything, or is there anything that you'd like the listeners to know about you that I didn't share to kind of set the context for tonight's conversation?
I guess I grew up on a farm. That maybe plays into it a little bit.
Can I clarify farm? Is that like a huge farm, or like?
No, not. We had it was a beef farm, so we had cows, and we had about 20 cows.
Okay.
And so I grew up taking care of cows.
So one thing that I'm learning as a podcast host is that when I talk to someone, their experience is sort of totally normal. And they're like, well, I don't really have anything to share about that because it's not that interesting. And in fact, it's incredibly interesting because nobody else was you. It's like nobody else had the experience and the perspective that you had. And getting guests to articulate that is tricky sometimes. But I would love to hear a little bit more about life growing up on the farm and your childhood and your upbringing.
So I spent a good amount of time hucking hay bales and, putting up and taking down fence. We used electric fence, and just, dealing with animals that, stuff always happens. Animals get hurt, or as a farm, you got to keep the herd going. So there's the paying attention to the cows and calling the vet to come in and do the artificial insemination at the right time and all that. So there was that element of it.
Other than taking care of animals, were you doing like skills at an early age that maybe like someone like me who grew up in suburban Massachusetts, or Todd, I think you grew up in suburbia as well, that we might not have been doing, like learning how to run a chainsaw or swinging an axe, or I don't know, are you plowing the driveway with a plow at like age 10, like with a tractor? Like, are you doing stuff that I didn't do?
I'd say my parents were like the opposite of helicopter parents. Like they didn't, and not that we never did anything with them. We did lots of fun stuff together. We'd play games, and I feel like it's a kind of more modern thing where parents are really focused on keeping their kids entertained. It's like, all right, like what are we going to plan? What are we going to do? How are we going to make this special? And my parents did not do that very, like it was kind of like, all right, well, we'll do this. We have these things that need to get done, and we had chores, including the farm, but also like I had to do the dishes every other night. I traded with my twin sister. And if we had free time, it was kind of like, all right, well, go figure it out. And my dad he's like a very solid person that just is on a very even keel. It's hard to influence him, I guess I would say. So I learned patience from him because he did things on his own time. And like, if I was complaining about something, not like, I want to do this or that, it was like, it made no difference. After a little while, you're just like, all right, well, I guess we'll do it when dad's ready. And through that, now that I look back at it, I'm like, I feel like I'm a pretty patient person. And that was a big reason why, is like, I guess I just have to wait. So how do I entertain myself? And so there was a lot of self-entertainment growing up. I read a ton. I did a lot of stuff outside. There's a brook that runs by our house, and build dams and all sorts of stuff. Living on the farm was nice because we had acreage around us to go and just like explore and whatnot. When I think about the unique factors of growing up, I'd say another one was we didn't have television. We had no TV at all until I was like 13 or so. And then then we finally got one, and it was this tiny little black and white TV. And of course it was rabbit. We didn't have cable or anything. So there's like about 3 channels you could get. And some of them were a little snowy.
A couple pounds of tinfoil.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you happen to remember any of the shows growing up watching on that black and white TV?
We would watch Seinfeld. We'd watch The Simpsons.
On the black and white TV?
On the black and white, yeah.
Wow.
It was like a replay of Seinfeld. It kind of coincided with us coming home from school.
1/3 of the people who listen to this podcast are my students. So to all students out there, take a moment and go Google VHS and rabbit ears. And as far as television antennas go, and just image it, and you'll see what we're talking about. Give a little context to the youngins out there. And you and I have had we've had lunch together for many, many years, over a decade at this point. And I think this conversation could go a million different ways. But before I take it the way that I think would be a good place to start, I just wanted to check in with Todd and see if you had any thoughts or questions before we move forward.
Nope. I can't even wait for this to unfold.
The next step from there for me, the conversation would be to start to dig into your decision to hike the Appalachian Trail. And if you could give like a super brief background on what that is, like where does it start? Where does it end? How long is it? How long does it take someone to do? And then we can kind of go from there.
Sure. So the Appalachian Trail runs up the Appalachian Mountains, which basically run up the East Coast. It starts in Georgia, in northern Georgia, and goes right on up into the center of Maine, like 2150 about mileage, 2,150. And it takes a typical through hike, which means you start at one end and you hike to the other, takes like 4 to 6 months.
Wow. So a through hike is different from a different type of hike in that, like, as a teacher, if I hiked a month every summer for 5 summers, that's different. And doing the entire thing over the course of those 5 summers, that's not a through hike. We're starting and just hiking through until I stop at the end. That's the through hike.
Yeah. So through hike is right. You hike it in a season. What you're talking about is called section hiking, where you piece it together.
So obviously I'm guessing no one forced you to do this. You chose to do it. And what was the impetus for your choosing to do, what some would classify as a really physically rigorous and cognitively challenging feat?
I don't always know why I do stuff, but it's nice to think back and try to figure it out.
I always ask my students, what is your why?
Right.
And if the answer is, well, I don't know, well, maybe we need to think about how we're spending our time and our attention, right?
And I think it's important too to take time to ask those questions. And I sometimes struggle with that. Like, I just go day to day, and it's like, why are you doing that way? Maybe sometimes taking the time to ask those questions helps you to just have a better life. The trail passes a couple miles from where I grew up. I grew up right at the end of a dirt road, and if you go up that dirt road about 2 miles-ish, the Appalachian Trail crosses right over the road. So when I was a young kid, probably like 6 or 7, my stepbrother took me and my sister up, and we hiked on part of the trail, and he told us, "Hey, this is the Appalachian Trail. It goes forever, all the way from Georgia to Maine." And for some reason, as a little kid, I was just kind of like, wow, that's really cool. I want to do that sometime. And so I sort of always had that little thing in the back of my head. And then towards the very end of high school, some of my friends and I started doing little camping trips. And then in college, I really got into doing outdoor stuff. At Colgate, I worked for their outdoor program. They have a great outdoor education program. So I got into backpacking, rock climbing, canoeing, outdoor stuff during college. And so then when I graduated, I was I still had that little seed in the back of my head about the Appalachian Trail. And I was like, all right, I'm going to do this.
So you did it shortly after graduating from college?
Yeah, I graduated, and then I worked through that winter construction carpentry to save up money. And then I started in April, the year after I graduated.
So you were in your early 20s when you did that.
Yeah.
So if I were to take you back to your early 20s and ask you what was the goal for that, was it just something cool to do, or was it to feel a sense of accomplishment, or was it you just want to get out in the great outdoors and you just happen to live 2 miles from a trail and you chose that trail?
I would say if I had to pick one thing, it would be the sense of accomplishment. It was kind of like a really big thing, and I wanted to see if I could do it. I was like that seems hard. I had done enough backpacking to know I can backpack, but I'd never been out for weeks and weeks or anything. And I don't know, I just wanted to try it and see if I could do it.
Is it one, they have one over here, I think it's called the Wonderland Trail. It goes around Mount Rainier. You have to have it's like a raffle or something. You have to put your name in the hat years in advance sometime. Is it the same thing, or is it you just start wherever you want and just roll?
No, it's and the interesting thing is you think I'm going to go out and be in the woods for 6 months. It's going to be a really solitary experience, but it's anything but, because there's just, you meet so many people, and it's a really social experience in a way. It took me 6 months. These interesting experiences where you'd kind of fall in with a group of people, and you might hike with them for a week or two, and then for whatever reason you get separated, and then 3 months later you just run into them again, up in New Hampshire or something. So
it's pretty cool.
So I just looked it up. I just, as you were talking, I was curious to know what the success rate of it is. And it says for a few decades now, many start out knowing that about 75% of the people who try to through hike the 2,000 plus mile AT end up quitting. So the success rate is around 25% on average. So
that rings true. Yeah.
Well, you're in the top 25%. Way to go.
Yeah, man.
Was it hard?
It was hard.
And what was the hardest part?
The hardest part, well, my hike was broken up into a lot of different pieces because different people hiked with me for different parts of it. But I'd say the hardest part was in the beginning. I started out down in Georgia by myself, and like a week into it, my knee really started hurting. I've struggled with my knees my whole life, probably football injuries, etc. And so I was kind of like, dang, like I'm 2 weeks into this thing and like my knees like swelling up. And I had thought about it a little bit ahead of time. Like it's going to be hard, like there's going to be challenges. And so I just like slowed down. Like I stopped. There was a hostel that I stayed at for a couple nights. And then I just did like short little days for a little bit. And then just slowly like worked through it. And then it was just part of the getting in shape aspect of it. I didn't do a lot of training before starting, other than I was working manual labor, so it was a physical job, but I didn't do like Stairmaster or like hiking hills or stairs or anything really. I thought I'll get into shape at the beginning.
So based on the people that you met out there, or from your experience, what would you surmise would be the main reason or reasons that 75% of people quit?
And there's a lot of reasons. I mean, injuries, one of them. There was several people that I knew that got injured. And then, I mean, there's just a range of reasons. Some people, they kind of had a fantasy of what hiking is, but when they actually got into hiking, they realized they didn't like it. I don't know. I honestly don't know if there's like a predominant reason.
How long did it take you?
It took 6 months. And then towards the end, it's like, I didn't want it to stop. I didn't want it to end, I'm like, so then you're like, you're not like pushing 20-mile days. You're like,
you want to draw
slowing
it out,
down because you want to draw it out.
You could always get to the end and turn around.
Right. That's true. So actually, there was this one dude, his trail name was Stump Knocker. And he had hiked it. He had like started and hiked it and then turned around and hiked it back. And he was like on his second time going north when I ran into him.
Wow.
I'm not really in that scene. I've never done it, but I just think the trail name thing is kind of fascinating. Like I know a couple people that have done it, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, I'm a trail name." Blah blah blah. I'm like, does anyone just say, "I refuse to have a trail name. Like this is my name, and whether I'm on the trail or off, this you can call me Pete. I don't care." What was your trail name?
My trail name was Swedish.
My students listen to this. Do I dare ask?
Well, let's just say I really liked Swedish fish.
Okay.
Fair
enough.
Plus, if you don't have a trail handle, I mean, you can't be a legend, right?
Right.
You can't just be Pete the Trail Guy. That doesn't make any sense at all. Whatever.
So you finish it. You start in Georgia, you finish in Maine, and you come off of Mount Katahdin. And where do you go from there?
Yeah. So it's kind of it's tough because, well, first of all, you've been hiking every day for months and months, and like when you're hiking every day with a heavy pack, like you're burning so many calories that you can eat whatever you want, and you're still like right now I'm a hair under 200, and when I finished the trail I was probably like 175 maybe. And so you're like, you finish the trail and you're used to eating a ton of food. And when I remember thinking like, all right, I got to like cut back on how much I'm eating because I'm not going to be burning 3,000 calories a day. And then, so it is tough. It was a tough transition. It's like, what am I going to do now? I guess I'll go back to doing carpentry.
Weird.
Building houses.
Do you have to cache food on the trail, or is it just so open and along the way there's just places that you can get like all the stuff you need?
You don't have to cache it. You can get it. You can get it in towns.
Yeah, that's cool.
I did a lot of. You can mail a package to yourself, a general delivery to a post office.
Yeah.
So I actually bought a lot of bulk food ahead of time, and then had my folks mail packages to. I didn't know how, so I would communicate with them. It was back in the day, so I had a phone card, and I have to find a payphone and
very nice.
Type in the number and be like, "Hey, can you
mail me my food?
4 days worth of food to whatever town in Virginia?"
And if you were to look back on your experience hiking the Appalachian Trail, what would you say is one of the things that you learned during that experience that you have been able to apply to your life since?
Yeah, I'd say, man, quite a few things. One that pops right to mind is just like the importance of sticking with it. When you're out there hiking, there's a lot of variables. The weather is a big one, and you're basically exercising all day long. You're carrying a 40-pound pack all day long. It's tough. So there's a lot of times where you're just kind of in a grind. You're going up a hill, your legs are tired, maybe it's raining, wind's blowing, but for me it was just like to have that goal, you know, the mountain in Maine that you're trying to get to to be able to focus on that goal and push through the hardships was kind of a big lesson that I learned.
I'd be curious to know, like the mindset of a day on the hike. Is it just breaking the big thing down into small goals? So when I have not done that, but I guess my bike ride was similar in time. No, not similar in time length. I did it in 2 months, but similar in like the goal is to get to this thing, but today I'm just going to focus on this. How did you break that down each day? Was it like, oh, I'm just going to hike till lunch and then see where I'm at, or look at a map and say, oh, I want to get to this point today? Because if you're just focusing on Maine and Georgia, you're not going to feel like you're getting any closer. How do you kind of embrace the struggle of the hike and breaking it down, breaking the big thing down into small things to make the whole thing manageable?
You kind of plan your next day, or it just depends on the person. I'm a little bit of a planner, but not like super planned out. So for me, it was kind of like on a little bigger scale. It's like, all right, my next food drop is at this place, right? Like, so maybe my folks are sending a package of food. So I need to get there in this kind of, range of time, and then thinking, all right, well, how far am I going to hike tomorrow? What are my options? So yeah, I'd say it was chunk by chunk.
Yeah, I just think that's such an important thing in life, right? Like I'm trying to get from A to B, but the goal isn't just to get from A to B. The goal is to really focus on A and kind of let B happen when it happens. And I think that's like a skill I'm trying to work with myself and then work with my daughter. It's like we have this big thing that we're trying to accomplish, but we can't focus on the big thing right now. We're going to focus on what we have control over today. I feel like something like hiking the Appalachian Trail is a really good representation of that.
And we did things too. Like one time I was with this one group and it was just the right thing. And we were like, you know what? Let's do a 30-mile day tomorrow. And so we got up before the sun and did it. We hiked 31 miles.
Was that your single biggest day?
Yeah.
Cool.
That was fun. It was also raining all day, which maybe helped. I don't know. It's like you just get it when it wasn't pouring. It was just kind of sprinkling. It's just like you get in the grind and just go.
You're going to be wet either way. You may as well just keep walking.
Yeah. Stay warm.
That's cool. Actually, what you just said, there's a perfect segue for where I want to go with this, because you mentioned the payphone. And Halleck is one of the few people that I know that doesn't have a cell phone. And he doesn't have a cell phone not because he doesn't have access to a cell phone, but just because he chooses not to have a cell phone. It's interesting when we sit down and have lunch and talk about different things. And he shares with me how by the day, life is getting more challenging without a cell phone. He's a coach. He has 2 kids, and all the conveniences that come along with having a cell phone, he's still kind of working around. And we've had lots of conversations about the importance of venturing outside of one's comfort zone. And I think, Pogue, where I'd like to go with the conversation is kind of wherever you want to go with it, but your willingness to continue to do the inconvenient or the uncomfortable thing.
Happiness is all relative, right? So it's like, most people shower every day, right? Like you get up, you shower, you don't think, oh, wow, like I'm showering. This is like amazing, right? It's just like a thing you do. But if you go out and you hike for 7 days with a heavy pack and you're sweating after 7 days of that, you're like gnarly. On the trail, you end up hitchhiking into town a lot. A lot of people that live in the near a trail crossing will know, oh yeah, hikers come and they pull up, and I would say, I will not be offended if you roll the window down.
Or if you just tell me to stay on.
And they'll be like, oh, no, it's good. And then you get in and close the door, and then they're like rolling the window down.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to the shower point. You haven't showered for 7 days, and then you take that shower. It is the most blissful experience to just soap up and rinse all that dirt off and then come out like freshly clean. And but if you just do it every day, I shower every day before school, and I'm not like in there like, oh wow, this is amazing, like I feel great. But in juxtaposition to going for 7 days and sweating a bunch and then showering, now it's like a great moment. That small comfort is much bigger because you went through the hardship of not showering for 7 days. Like what an American thing to say, like, oh, you went for 7 days. Like, I'm sure plenty of people in the world go for 7 days all the time without showering.
So do you look for so this is just one example, right? But do you seek those things out actively? Like, how uncomfortable can I make myself by not having a cell phone? How uncomfortable can I make myself by not taking it because of the reward? Or is it just you just weave those into the tapestry of your existence?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say I'm like actively going around and thinking like, all right, how can I make myself miserable so that I can then feel great?
Yeah.
But I try to keep it in perspective of like, we don't need too much. We can get, let's
like, we don't need to be frivolous.
I don't know
we don't
if this
need to
is
go...
a great example, but
yeah.
So just today, our kitchen sink, the drain has been going like slower and slower, right? And I'm like, oh, I got to deal with this at some point. And finally, it's just like, it's going so slow that anyway. So it took me like 3 hours to figure it out, to like get the right snake and get it down the thing. And like now it's running great. And I'm like, wow, I'm going to really enjoy doing dishes for the next like few weeks, because now the drain is working.
Huh. How do you keep that in your awareness though? That's the hard part for me, is like, I used to sleep on the floor for no apparent reason because I knew it was uncomfortable. And I was like, well, the older I get, the worse it's going to sleep to suck to sleep on this floor. So I might as well get used to it for a while. And then, aside from my wife looking at me like I was nuts, then I realized, well, you don't really need to do that. But I understand what you're saying, because then you get back in bed and you're like, wow, this is 1,000 times better than sleeping on the floor. But I wouldn't be able to always keep that in the forefront of everything that I thought, because at some point, like with the drain example, I would get so irritated that the drain's not flowing that I would just fix it and then be like, look, I fixed the drain, instead of then relishing the fact that the drain is so much better that I'm now going to enjoy all the things that it was complicating. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I wonder like how, like, I don't even think you realize that you do it. It's just that you do it. That's cool. I wish I could learn that somewhere.
One thing that I wonder, Halleck, I'm curious to know if you realize that you do it, but I feel like you're very deliberate about what you take on that might add luxury, leisure, convenience to your life. And you're careful about, if I take that step and I step over that line, I'm over that line for the rest of my life. And I'm going to be really deliberate about being there. And I often talk about like, I feel like it's the human experience to kind of just we don't want a ton more than we have. We just want a little bit more than we have. That's kind of like what we desire, right? And we get that little bit and then we just want a little bit more. And next thing you know, you look back and you've accumulated all this stuff and you have all these lifestyle amenities, and you can't really go back, or we're not willing to go back because we don't want to be uncomfortable. Whereas I think, Halleck, one of your strengths, in my opinion, is you're like, yeah, that thing would make aspects of my life easier. That thing would make my existence more convenient. But I'm going to be wary of that, because if I commit to that, then I'm giving up these other things. And I think that's really cool. And I think the cell phone is an example of that for you. I don't know if you'd be able to articulate in words why you just don't want to get a cell phone. And I know you're a thoughtful dude, so there's a reason why. And I think that's just one example of you saying, yep, I can afford to pay someone to build my house, but I'm going to take 3 years and build it myself, because whatever that because is.
The cell phone, there's several things there. And you're right. It is, it's not just like it is a thoughtful decision. I guess maybe addiction would be the word, but like, I worry that if I had a cell phone, I would be on it all the time.
That's what I think is really special about the way that you approach things, is you have this awareness of, I'm not going to commit to this thing, because if I do, it's going to tip over the teeter-totter, and I'm not going to be able to tip it back.
The other thing about the cell phone in my like thought process for why I don't want one is there's sort of this assumption with the phone that like, being able to communicate all the time is good. And I don't really necessarily think that's true. I think being able to communicate is important when it's important to be able to communicate. It's like you get just sucked into this communication spiral where it's like, oh yeah, and then you're like you're not in the real world around you, you're in the communication. And is that really making your life better?
Would you say your childhood was shielded? I'm not insinuating that it was, but does that, like, it seems like you have a very close-knit pack of family, and that's what you deem as important, and correct me if I go wrong, but would you say that might contribute, like you have enough, like that's wholesome enough for you?
I think that might be true. I grew up on the farm with my family there, and I had friends and went to school and played sports, but I spent a lot of time just kind of rambling around the farm.
Speaking of which, one other piece I wanted to bring up was, so when you were building your house, when you started the house, you had one kid, and over the course of the house being built, you had your second child, and you had a dog, and you lived basically above your parents' garage in this tiny little apartment with kids and pets. And the whole time he's working full time, then he gets out of school and he goes over to the house that he's building and he works into the night, and then just keeps repeating that for it was like 2.5 years it took you to build your house plus. And I just think that there's so much to be said for that. Again, the American mindset, you're living in this tiny little square footage apartment, which would probably be par for course for someone in any other country, right? With your family kind of stuffed in this little place. This is how I viewed it when I came to visit, and spending so much time and energy building the house. And it might take 2 or 3 years, but we're going to stick it out and we're going to be in this tiny apartment until the house is done. And that's not comfortable, but that's what we're going to do. What I'm trying to say, I guess, is for a lot of people I know, it would be, my wife and I make decent money. We can afford to at least have this part of the house done or that part of the house done faster. But you're like, nope, I'm going to do it. Everything soup to nuts on my own. And if that takes as long as it takes, I'm fine with that.
I don't know. I have a question, actually. Do you see it as uncomfortable? That's what it is, right? Like, was it uncomfortable to live in that small spot where you're building your own house? Or was that just like, that's what I have to do? Like, I'm going to go create something cooler. I'm going to do it myself. Was there a level of discomfort, or were you just like, that's what happened? Like, this is the evolution of my house.
I think the vision is what carried it through. My wife's from Montana, and we lived out there for 6 years after college. We moved back here. We rented a place for like half a year, and then we moved into with my parents, and we finished their upper garage into an apartment.
Right. You lived with your parents, you built the apartment you were going to live in so you could live there while you built your house.
We moved into the apartment and lived there while we built the house. And those situations there's always some uncomfortable parts, because it's Pete's right. It's a small apartment. It's crazy to think back and talk about it, because sometimes I think back and I'm like, how the heck did we do that?
To me, it's fascinating because it's like each one of those things is like you were saying. It's like a goalpost, but it propels me to do the next thing. Like I'm going to go to my parents' house, I'm going to build an apartment. And then I'm going to have a son, and it's going to be just on the cusp of it's going to be so much better in a bigger place. And then I'm going to build a bigger place. But it's going to be so much better when we bring the daughter home and she goes over the bridge. Like,
it's a little uncomfortable, but I mean, another huge part of it is having the right partner makes a huge difference. I mean, we built the house together.
Yeah, right.
Like she worked as much on it as I did.
That's awesome.
On top of nursing our daughter and
all the hard parts. Right.
So
I know Pogue's family well enough, and I know him well enough to know there's also a level of pragmatism in there to not be wasteful, with anything, with food, with money, with time. From the outside looking in, I think that's a big piece of it.
So like a lot of growing up was, if it didn't fit in with our values, we didn't do it. And so in that aspect, when we're talking about like choosing to live a more challenging life or not a life of ease, that plays into it a lot, where it's like, because it's much easier to just throw everything right in the garbage.
That also creates awareness, going back to what we're talking about with the why. We do this thing because we thought through the process. We compost because we don't throw out everything because. And when I spend time with people who are really, really thoughtful about every aspect of their life and every action that they take, it's often very daunting, but it's also very inspiring in seeing how you live your life. So here's an example, Pogue. You're the only human that I know that has a rack above your sink, and you rinse off your plastic and you hang your plastic, what I would call garbage, drying and hanging above your sink so that you take the plastic when it dries and you recycle it. And we recycle our plastic too, but I don't like hang dry my plastic or
Actually,
my trash.
That's funny because that fits right in, because I grew up doing that. Because we composted and recycled, we didn't generate a lot of garbage. If you have garbage sitting around for a long time, it can get super stinky and nasty.
So you basically clean your garbage before you throw it out.
The garbage is sitting there for so long that you don't want to throw anything wet in there, because wetness is what causes rot. So some of the plastic we recycle, but some of that we just hang it up to dry it and then throw it in the garbage, just because it sits there for so long.
Hang your trash out to dry.
And
you're the only one I know that does that.
We never have trouble with bears getting our garbage because our garbage cans are in our basement, and they can be in our basement because it doesn't stink. Easiest isn't always best. It's like, just because it's easy doesn't mean it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, that the core values piece is huge. And I took about 2 years to sit down and really kind of grind through what those are for me. And I've talked about them quite a bit on past episodes. So I won't dig into it now. But I think once you decide who you want to be, making decisions going forward is a lot easier. Because this is either in line with my values or it's not. And if I find myself taking actions or making decisions that are not in line with who I say I want to be, then I have one or two choices. I either need to change who I say I want to be, or change my action to be more in line with who I say I want to be. And I think that that's really, really important. What actions do you want to live through to be the best version of yourself? To me, that's what someone's core values are. So in line with that, in line with the core values from which you were raised, I am curious to know why you continue to seek out challenge in life. The gist of what I want to get at tonight, which is your perspective on the importance of living in discomfort. Like what's to be gained from that? What do you think is a fulfilled life when it comes to living outside your comfort zone?
Pete's got all the heavy questions today.
For me, I've realized one thing that kind of unites a lot of aspects of what I enjoy doing is problem solving. I think that's one reason that I enjoy teaching the classes that I do, is because of that aspect of hopefully helping my students learn some real world problem solving skills. But for me, I just love taking on a challenge and trying to figure out an answer to it. You look at the Appalachian Trail experience, 6 months of hiking and myriad problem solving. Just so many different things that came up. One of my cousins told me, I like to say it because, I don't have a cell phone, and a lot of times people are like, what if your car breaks down? What if da-da-da? The quote is, I do what people have been doing for thousands of years. I figure it out. It's like, you can always figure it out. It might not be easy, but it's satisfying, I think, to have a problem and to overcome it. And it's even more gratifying if it doesn't work out the first time, and you have to try it and it doesn't work, and you try it another way and that doesn't work. And then the third, fourth time you finally get it and you're like, yes, it's just such a satisfying feeling. I mean, I guess the challenge thing, you can kind of think about every challenge as that, problem solving, overcoming something. And it's even satisfying sometimes when it doesn't work out. So a lot of the stuff I do that's challenging is physical stuff, It's like going out and chopping your own firewood, building your own shed. It's all kind of doing things physical. 150 years ago, there was no such thing as fitness, because everyone got fitness through their, if you're out homesteading, you're cutting
it was called living.
It's called living, and
called survival.
You just were fit through your life. And so it's kind of trying to keep a little element of that, I don't know if you ever read Calvin and Hobbes. He jokes about his dad wanting him to build character, No one ever comes up and tells you a story about how, oh yeah, we did this and everything went perfectly and it was so comfortable. And a good story is hey, the car broke down, the cell phone died, we had to walk 3 miles, it was snowing, and we got through it. So I think being uncomfortable makes you appreciate being alive. It's you just appreciate the little things, and you get such a feeling of accomplishment from getting through something difficult. climbing that mountain's hard, but then you get to the top and it's like that feeling of accomplishment. Working out's kind of the same thing. I never want to start working out. It's like, but so why do we do it? When you're done, you feel amazing. Yeah. That's why I work out. That like 5 minutes when the workout's over and you're sitting there and your heart's like pumping, but then kind of slowing down a little bit. You get that feeling of euphoria of like, yeah, I did it. I think that kind of feeling can kind of happen in a lot of different uncomfortable situations.
Yeah, I describe it as a feeling of empowerment, and it's very difficult to even try to describe to someone who's never experienced it before. I've shared many times in this podcast, but that's when I'm fully present, when I am not thinking about things that are going on in my life otherwise. I just think there's so much value in pushing through the hard thing, and pushing through the hard thing is venturing outside your comfort zone. That's what it is.
Is that right? I was thinking about things while you guys were talking about those things. I wrote the things you learn about yourself, the things that you can do, maybe that others won't, or think that it's wild that you even attempt to endeavor those things. Like, that's what fills it up for me. I'm like, oh, you would go climb that trail for 6 months? Like, that's wild. I would never do that. But then you're like, I wonder what makes that guy tick. Like, why would he do that? And I think the question always lingers. I was just thinking about running too. Like, Pete taught me this rule, and he doesn't know he taught it to me, but he shared it with me. It's, what is it, your 5-minute rule or your 15-minute rule? If you start a workout, you have to do it for 15 minutes before you can stop.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
5-minute rule. Have to start, but I'm allowed to stop anytime after 5 minutes. But I do have to start. Yeah. 99.5% of the time, once I'm 5 minutes in, I won't stop.
Yeah. I find myself, I think that there's some power to leaving that door open for yourself too. There's like a level of self-accountability or escape, maybe, I don't know. But then you realize it's the hard thing. Like, whatever, it's not that hard, right? I'm just going to keep going. But I find myself thinking that oftentimes, like if I'm really tired and I have to go running a ridiculous distance, I'm like, man, this first mile is just killing me. And then I'm like, well, I mean, I always thought it was 15. So I'm like, well, you'd have to stick it out 15 minutes. And then after that, you're like, I'm so far from home now, I'm not going to turn around anyways. Who really cares? There's that. And like, I started thinking about other people who do the same thing. Like, I read this thing about Steve Prefontaine, who was a really good runner out of Oregon in the 70s. People would ask him why he ran so hard. Like, why would you train so hard to run this way? And he's like, when I'm at the last 800 meters, I tell myself, who wants this worse? And he looks around and he's the front runner and he's like, I want it worse, so I'm going to go get it. But if you never have the opportunity to test your mettle that way, like, you don't get it, right? Same with the workout, same with those kind of things. So I think that there's many different, correlating little hooks in there. But I think that, like what you said, Pete, like the first thing you have to do is just have a willingness to start to do something hard.
I was thinking back to the hiking the trail. One thing that surprised me about it was when I first started, I thought, all right, I'm going to start and it's going to be hard. And then I'm going to get in really good shape and then it's going to be easy. And that didn't happen. Oh. Like every day to get up, lace those boots on, hoist up the 40-pound pack was hard. I just got really fast. It still was a grind and it still was satisfying to get to the top.
Yeah. There's a saying in the fitness world, it never gets easier, we just get stronger.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, it's where we choose to place our attention, right? I think that's a huge piece of it too.
Yep. I just love the way you live your life. I admire the way that you and your wife Shannon go about your day-to-day, your challenges, the way that you're raising your kids. It's just really, really cool. And I'm grateful to be in your orbit. Yeah. So thank you.
Mentioning Shannon, I also have to say, like, I just feel super blessed to have found a partner that I can do that, live my life with and be so satisfied. If you can find that person, you're lucky.
And that first day that she's like, yeah, I'm cool cleaning the trash before I throw it out. And that was the day that you knew she was the one.
She may have rolled her eyes when I wasn't looking. I don't know, but she went with it.
Awesome. To all the listeners out there, we do thank you so very much for your attention. We appreciate your ears, and we are incredibly grateful for your time. We are the School and Struggle Podcast. On behalf of Halleck Pogue, a.k.a. No Phone Pogue, and my boy Todd Ellis, we are out.
See ya.